May 27th, 1900, Volume 3. The love of God and grace penetrate into the most intimate parts of man. This morning, as I was feeling afflicted more than ever because of the privation of my highest good, he just barely made himself seen and told me, just as a mighty wind invests the people and penetrates even into their bowels, in such a way as to shake the whole person, in the same way, my love and my grace, rearing up on the wings of the winds, invest and penetrate the heart, the mind, and the most intimate parts of man. But in spite of this, ungrateful, man rejects my grace and offends me. What is not my bitter sorrow? However, I was all confused and annihilated within myself and did not dare to utter a word. I just thought, how is it that he does not come? And even when he comes, I do not see him clearly. It seems that I have lost clarity. Who knows whether I will see his beautiful face, unveiled as before? While I was thinking of this, my benign Jesus added, "My daughter, why do you fear, when your state is par excellence for the union of our wills?" And wanting to cheer me and compassionate my sorrowful state, he told me, "You are my new job. Do not oppress yourself excessively if you do not see me with clarity. I have told you since the other day that I am not coming according to my usual way, that I want to chastise the people. And if you saw me with clarity, you would come to understand what I am doing. And since your heart has received the grafting of mine, I know what you would suffer, just as my heart is suffering because I see myself forced to chastise my creatures. So in order to spare you these pains, I do not let myself be seen with clarity. Who can say the piercings that this left in my poor heart? Oh, Lord, give me the strength to endure the pain." May 27, 1922, Volume 14, The Prevenient Act and the Actual Act. I was thinking to myself, if one act done in his will is so great, how many of them, alas, do I let escape? And my sweet Jesus moving in my interior told me, "My daughter, there is the prevenient act and the actual act. The prevenient act is when the soul, at the first rising of the day, fixes her will in mine, and decides and confirms that she wants to live and operate only in my volition. She anticipates all of her acts, and makes them all flow in my will. With the prevenient will, my sun rises, my life remains duplicated in all of her acts, as though in one single act. And this makes up for the actual act. However, the prevenient act can be shaded, obscured by the human ways, by one's own will, by self-esteem, by negligence, and other things, which are like clouds before the sun, that render its light less vivid on the face of the earth. On the other hand, the actual act is not subject to clouds. On the contrary, it has the virtue of dispelling the clouds, if there are any, and it makes many more suns rise, in which my life is duplicated with such vividness of light and heat as to form as many new suns, one more beautiful than the other. However, both of them are necessary. The prevenient act gives the hand, disposes and forms the plane for the actual act. The actual act preserves and expands the plane of the prevenient. May 27, 1926, Volume 19. The divine will envelops everything and everyone in the unity of its light. How the whole creation possesses unity, and one who must live in the divine will also possesses this unity. I was doing my usual acts in the supreme volition, and an inaccessible light enveloped my little being. It made as though present to me all the works of my Creator, and I had an I love you for each created thing, a motion for each motion, an adoration and a thank you of gratitude for all creation. However, I comprehended that it was the light itself that administered to me that I love you for each thing, that motion, that adoration. I was just prey to the light, while it enlarged me. It made me smaller and did whatever it wanted with my littleness. Now, while in this state, I was sorrowful because I could not see my sweet Jesus, and I thought to myself, Jesus has left me, and in this blessed light I do not know where to turn my steps in order to find him, because one can see neither where it begins nor where it ends. O holy light, let me find the one who is my whole life, my highest good. But while I poured myself out because of the pain of the privation of Jesus, all goodness he came out from within my interior, and all tenderness he told me, My daughter, why do you fear? I do not leave you. Rather, it is my supreme will that eclipses me within you. The light of my will is endless, infinite. Its boundaries cannot be found, neither where it begins nor where it ends. On the other hand, my humanity does have its boundaries, its limits, and therefore, since my humanity is smaller than my eternal will, I remain enwrapped and as though eclipsed within it. And while I am with you, I give the field of action to my will. I enjoy its divine operating in the littleness of your soul, and I prepare a new lesson to give you, to make known to you more and more the wonders of my supreme will. Therefore, when you swim in it, be certain that I am with you. Even more, I do what you do, together with you, and in order to give it complete field of action, I remain as though hidden in you, to enjoy its fruits. Now, my daughter, you must know that true light is not separable. Look, the sun, which is in the atmosphere, also has this prerogative and possesses the unity of light. The light is so compacted together within its sphere as to lose not one atom. And even though it descends down below, filling the whole earth with light, the light never separates. It is so compact within itself, united, not separable, that it never loses anything of its solar light. So much so that altogether it spreads its rays, dispelling everywhere the darkness from the earth, and altogether it withdraws its light, leaving not even the traces of its atoms. If the light of the sun were divisible, for how long would the sun have been poor in light, having no more strength to illuminate all the earth? One could say, divided light, desolate earth. So the sun can sing victory, and it possesses all its strength and its effects, thanks to the unity of its light. And if the earth receives so many admirable and innumerable effects, to the point that the sun can be called the life of the earth, everything comes from the unity of the light it possesses, which after so many centuries has lost not even one atom of light which was entrusted to it by God, and therefore it is always triumphant, majestic, and fixed, and always stable in its light, in singing the praises of the triumph and the glory of the eternal light of its Creator. Now, my daughter, the sun is the symbol of my eternal will, and if this symbol possesses the unity of light, much more so does my will, which is not a symbol, but the reality of light, while the sun can be called the budding of the inaccessible light of my will. And you have seen its immensity, and how one does not see a globe of light like the sun, but vastness, such that the human eye cannot arrive at seeing where it ends or where it begins. Yet all this endlessness of light is one single act of the eternal will. All this uncreated light is so compacted together as to become inseparable, indivisible, and so more than sun, it possesses the eternal unity, in which the triumph of God and of all our works is founded. Now this triumph of the unity of the supreme will, the center of its dwelling place, of its throne, is the center of the sacrosanct Trinity. From this divine center start its most refulgent rays, which invest the whole celestial fatherland. All saints and angels are invested by the unity of my will. They all receive its innumerable effects, and abducting them all to itself, it makes of them one single unity with the supreme unity of my will. These rays invest the whole creation and form its unity with the soul who lives in my will. Look, the unity of this light of my will, which resides in the center of the three divine persons, is already fixed in you. So one is the light and the act, one is the will. Now while you do your acts in this unity, they are already incorporated in that single act of the center, and the divinity is already with you, doing what you do. The celestial Mama, the saints and angels, and the whole creation, all in chorus, repeat your act and feel the effects of the supreme will. Watch, listen to the prodigy never before seen of that single act, which fills heaven and earth, with the very Trinity unifying itself with the creature and placing itself as the primary act of the creature. At that moment, I could see the eternal light fixed in me, and I could hear the chorus of the whole of heaven and of all creation in its mute language. But who can say everything in what I comprehended of the unity of the light of the supreme will? Jesus added, "My daughter, in order for each act to be good and holy, its origin must come from God. And behold, for the soul who lives in my will, in the unity of this light, her adoration, her love, her motion, and everything she may do begin from the divine Trinity. So she receives the origin of her acts from God Himself, and here is how her adoration, her love, her motion are the same adoration which the three divine persons have among themselves, the same reciprocal love which reigns among the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And her motion is that eternal motion which never ceases and gives motion to all. The unity of this light places everything in common. Whatever God does, the soul does, and whatever the soul does, God does. God by His own virtue, the soul by virtue of the unity of the light that envelops her. Therefore the prodigy of living in my will is the prodigy of God Himself. It is primary prodigy, while all other prodigies, all other works, even good and holy ones, remain eclipsed. They disappear before the acts done in the unity of this light. Imagine the sun spreading its rays in the unity of its light, invading all the earth, and then the creatures, placing before the blazing light of the sun all the lights that exist in the low world, electric light, private lights. As many as they would want to put there, their light would always be meager before the sun, almost as if they did not exist. And no one would use all those lights to give light to their steps in order to walk, to their hands in order to work, to their eyes in order to see, but all would use the sun. And all those lights would remain idle without doing good to anyone. Such are all the other works which are not done in the unity of the light of my will. They are the little lights before the great sun, which one almost does not notice. However, those very lights which are useless, which make no impression and do no good when the sun is present, once the sun disappears, acquire their little value, do their little good, are light in the darkness of the night, serve the work of man. However, they are never sun, nor can they do the great good which the sun can do. Yet the purpose of creation was that, all things having come out from within the unity of this light of the supreme Fiat, all should have remained in the unity of it. Only the creature did not want to recognize this purpose. He went out of the unity of the light of the sun of my will, and reduced himself to begging for the effects of this light, almost as the earth begs its vegetation and the development of the seeds it hides in its womb from the sun. What sorrow, my daughter, to reduce oneself from king to beggar, and to beg from those which were to be at his service. All afflicted and sorrowful, Jesus kept silent, and I comprehended all the sorrow that pierced him. I could feel his sorrow within me, penetrating deep into the inmost fibers of my soul. But I wanted to cheer Jesus at any cost, so I returned to my usual acts in the unity of his will, knowing that he easily passes from sorrow to joy when my littleness dives into the inaccessible light of his will. And Jesus loved together with me, and love healed his sorrow. Then he resumed his speaking. My daughter, since I am raising you in my will, oh, please do not ever want to give me this sorrow, so piercing, of going out of the unity of the light of the supreme Fiat. Promise me, swear that you will always be the newborn of my will. And I, my love, be consoled. I promise, I swear. And you must promise me to keep me always in your arms and sunken in your will. You must never leave me if you want me to be always, always the little daughter of your will. For I tremble and I fear myself, more so since the more you speak about this supreme volition, the more I feel that I am no good, and that the nothingness of my nothing makes itself felt more. And Jesus, sighing, added, My daughter, feeling your nothingness more does not oppose the living in my will. On the contrary, it is a duty of yours. All of my works are formed over nothing, and this is why the All can do what he wants. If the sun had reason and someone asked it, What good do you do? What are your effects? How much light and heat do you contain? It would answer, I do nothing. I just know that the light given to me by God is invested with the supreme will, and I do whatever it wants. I extend wherever it wants, and I produce the effects it wants. And while I do so much, I remain always nothing, and the divine will does everything in me. The same for all my other works. All their glory is to remain in their nothingness, in order to give the whole field to my will, to let it operate. Only man wanted to do without the will of his Creator. He wanted to make his nothingness operate, believing himself to be good at something, and the All, feeling himself placed after the nothing, went out of man, who reduced himself from superior to all to inferior to all. Therefore let your nothingness be always at the mercy of my will, if you want the unity of its light to operate in you and call the purpose of creation back to new life. May 27th, 1931, Volume 29. The life of good does not die, and is defense of all creatures. A prolonged good gives assurance to God and the soul. My poor mind was swimming in the immense sea of the eternal Fiat, and I was flowing in it like a little rivulet, and in my littleness I wanted to embrace its immensity, so as to fill myself completely with a will so holy, to be able to have the contentment of being able to say, my little being is nothing other than one single act of divine will. My little rivulet is full, inside and out, of that will that fills heaven and earth. O holy volition, you be the life, the actor, and the spectator of all my acts, so that all of them rising again in you, they may be the call of all the acts of creatures, to make them rise again in your Fiat, so that its kingdom may extend in all creatures. But while I was doing this, the thought told me, what is the good that I do by calling the acts of creatures to rise again in the divine will? And my lovable Jesus told me, my daughter, good is not subject to dying, and as the life of good rises, it places itself as defense of all creatures. And if the creatures who are disposed take that good, they not only remain defended, but take the life of that good. And the good rises and forms as many other lives for as many creatures who take it. And for those who are not disposed, it remains always as their defense, waiting for them to dispose themselves. The acts done in my will acquire the seed of light, and just as the light, though one, has the virtue of giving light to any eye that wants the good of the light in order to make it its own, the same for the littlest acts done in my divine will. Since it is immense and envelops all, the littlest act becomes light and defense of all. Not only this, but it requites its Creator of the love, glory, and adoration that, by right, he expects and demands from creatures. The acts done in my will have always something prodigious, and of their own they say, we are the defense of all. We remain between heaven and earth to defend the creatures, and with our light, we are light of every mind. We are the defenders of our Creator by repairing him with our perennial acts for the offenses that rise from the earth. And then good is always good. Do you think that everything I did while being on earth has all been taken by creatures? Not at all. How much of it is still left? But with this one cannot say that it is not good. Centuries and centuries will pass, and the time will come in which all the good I did will have life in the midst of creatures. What is not taken today, other creatures may take tomorrow in other epochs. Therefore the true life of good does not tire of waiting, and with an air of triumph they say, we are not subject to dying. Therefore, with certainty the time will come in which we will give our fruits that will make many other lives that resemble us rise again. Do you think that because you do not see any effect of all your acts in our divine Fiat, there will be nothing good? Not at all. Today it seems so, but wait for the times, and they will tell the great good that will come. Therefore continue and do not draw back. In fact, you must know that the prolixity of good is alone the most certain proof that assures God and the soul of the state she is in. A prolonged state of patience in the sufferings and painful encounters of life, a repeated prayer without ever tiring of repeating it, a faithfulness, constancy, and sameness of manners in all circumstances, form a sufficient ground, watered by the blood of one's own heart, in which God feels called by all the acts of the creature, as though by many assurances that he can fulfill his greatest designs. And the creature herself feels in the prolixity of her acts the dominion of herself and the assurance that she will not waver. The good of one day says nothing. A good that is today, yes, and tomorrow, no, says weakness and volubility, all fruits of the human will. An inconstant good says that that good, that virtue, is not the creature's own property, and therefore not being in her power, good changes into evil, and the virtue into vice. See, then, how in order for the soul to be sure that she possesses a good, a virtue, she must feel within herself the life of that virtue, and with iron constancy of years and years, and for her whole life, she must exercise herself in that good. And God feels assured to place his own and operate great things in the constancy of the creature. This I did with the Queen of Heaven. I wanted the prolixity of 15 years of life, pure, holy, and all of divine will, in order to descend from heaven to earth into her virginal womb. I could have done it before, but I did not want to. First, I wanted her acts of assurance, and the prolixity of her holy life, almost to give her the right to be my mamma, and for my infinite wisdom to have reason for having operated unheard of prodigies in her. And is this perhaps not the cause? The long prolixity of the long sufferings, for I wanted to be sure about you, and not with words but with facts. Was it perhaps not the cause of my many visits, and of the many truths I have manifested to you in the prolixity of your sacrificed life? I can say that I made myself seen, and I spoke to you from the center of the stake of your sacrifice. And when I hear you say, "Is it possible, my Jesus, that my exile be so long? How can you not have pity on me?" Do you know what I say? Ah, my daughter does not know well the secret that a prolonged sacrifice contains. And the longer it is, the greater are our designs to be fulfilled. Therefore trust me, and let me do. May 27th, 1938, Volume 36. Continuous and repeated acts bind God more to the creature and form the strength of her soul. How beautiful it is to live in the divine will. How God himself begs the creature. The rain of love that God pours over the creature, and the rain of love from those who live in the Fiat. I feel the need to enclose myself inside the divine volition, to continue my life in it. Oh, how I would love to be imprisoned in its light, so that I could neither see nor hear anything else but what regards its will. Then my beloved Jesus, coming back to visit my poor soul, all love, told me, "My blessed daughter, I want you here, imprisoned in my will, so that no other things can have life in you. Now you must know that all the harmony of the creature is in the repetition of her good acts done in my will. A single act does not form any harmony or beauty, but many continuous acts, united together, call the attention of God, who puts himself in waiting for the acts of the creature. As she performs them, he communicates to her, now beauty, now sanctity, now goodness, wisdom, or love. In sum, he provides her with his ornaments and divine qualities. All the acts repeated by the creature form the strength of her soul, binding God even more to herself. They form heaven in the depth of the soul, and as she goes on repeating her acts, some are turned into star, others into wind, blowing whispers of love. Others become a sea continuously murmuring love, glory, adoration to God the Creator. In some, the whole atmosphere is reproduced in her. However, when the acts are not continuously repeated, they lack that unifying power that gives strength to all. They lack that divine mode of acting unceasingly, sustaining each of them with creative strength in the perennial attitude of doing and redoing again. Furthermore, a single act has never formed any sanctity, because it has no strength. It does not possess the life of love, since true love never says enough, never stops, and if it does, it's dead. Only continuously repeated acts can send good surprises to heaven, whereas one arriving act is being enjoyed, another one follows, and more arrive, forming the enchantment for the heavenly fatherland. Therefore, in my will there is always something to do, and time cannot be wasted. Then, with a more tender tone and stronger love, he added, "My daughter, how beautiful it is when a soul loves to do the divine will. Heaven lowers itself, and everybody assumes the posture of venerating and adoring the supreme volition. They see its majesty, height, and power enclosed in the little circle of the creature, doing what it does in its celestial royal palace, sumptuously showing its love and works, being honored as great queen, to the extent that royal lives arise for as many acts as the creature does. Then my Fiat feels all its divine power, its ruling scepter brandished in royal modes, while the creature renders it all the honor it deserves. Since my Fiat embraces all, it feels so glorified that it is as if all would let it reign. In sum, we cannot find truer beauty, receive greater love, operate more exceptional prodigies than in the soul who loves to live in our will. My desire for the soul to live in our will, my anxiety and my ardent sighs are such that I keep repeating to the ear of her heart, "Make me content. Do not make me sigh any more. If you live in my Fiat, the night will be over for you, and you will enjoy the fullness of the day. Or better still, every act done in it will be a new day, bringing new graces, new love, and unexpected joys. All the virtues will have a celebration for you in their place of honor. Like many princesses, they will court your Jesus and your soul. You will form in yourself my throne of brightest light, where I will dominate as a king. In all freedom, I will dominate your whole being, even your breathing. I will court you with all my works, my pains, my steps, my love, my own strength to be your defense, your help, and your food. There is nothing I will not give you if you live in my will. Now you must know that our Supreme Being keeps the creature under a thick rain of love. All created things pour a rain of love upon her. The sun pours light of love. The wind pours waves, blows freshness and caresses of love. The air pours continuous lives of love. My immensity surrounding her, my power sustaining and bringing her as in my arms, my creative act preserving her. All pour on her infinite and powerful love, love that every instant creates more love. We are always over the creature to enclose and drown her with love. She makes us delirious for so much love, and still she doesn't let herself be won over to loving us. What pain, what suffering! But would you like to know who has exact knowledge of our uninterrupted reign of love? The one who lives in our will. Only she feels our continuous reign of love. Furthermore, by living in it, everything is hers. Not knowing what to do to give us in return, or how to shower her rain of love, she takes all created things, our immensity and power, our creative virtue, always in the act of creating only for the sake of love, and she ascends in our very will, beginning to pour on our divine being light and caresses of love, immense and powerful love, as if she wanted to match us, taking us in her arms and saying, "See how much I love you. You pour on me and I pour on you. I have in my power your immensity and power. That allows me to bring everything back to you." My daughter, you cannot comprehend how much relief we feel, how our flames remain refreshed and soothed under this rain of love from the creature. Our contentment is such that we feel as if we are repaid for the whole work of creation, and paid by the same coins of love with which we loved her so much. Our love has the virtue of letting form in the creature sufficient and abundant coins to pay us for what we have done for her. Therefore, in the midst of our joy, we say, "Tell us, what do you want? Do you want us to make up more stratagems of love? We'll do it for you. Tell us, what do you want? We will please you in everything. We will refuse you nothing. Denying you something, not pleasing you in all, would be like denying something to ourselves, like placing a discontent into our endless joys. Therefore, we find everything in the soul who lives in our will, and she finds everything in us. End of May 27th. Fiat.